If you're watching this tutorial, it's because you've chosen the split screen option for the type of game genre that you want to explore and work with for your game design work. Side note, this option has two components to it, a game scene and a race scene. And if you choose this option, I'd like to see you interacting with both types, not just one, to show me a full understanding of what you've been learning in Unity. So keep that in mind if you want to choose this pathway. In this first video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of all of the assets and organization components to both of these experiences before I go into a bit more in-depth detail of these systems in future videos. Let's start with our game scene, where we have these two players pitted against one another with a ball that drops from the sky and some goals to try to shoot them into. A couple things I want to point out here. We have the two different controls. I'm just going to control the top character for now, but something that's worth noting is that I can't actually score from the side. There's an invisible wall placed behind these nets to force it so that you can't actually score from the side, although it looks like I just did because I clipped through the wall there. So maybe this needs a bit of editing, maybe a bit more of an invisible wall there. I've just kind of play tested and managed to actually find there's a bit of a gap at the back here. Look at that, the invisible wall here, there's a gap. So this needs to be maybe updated and fixed. This is why playtesting is always a good idea. I noticed that my player one just got scored on. Another thing to note is that I'm able to score on myself, right? So now player two got a point because it went in player one's net. Notice I haven't actually labeled whose net is who. If you want to make this a bit more organized and clear, that's some content that you'll need to add in on your own. So what we got here is just a couple nets, a scoring system, and the ability to use some physics to be able to knock a ball into the net. But there's plenty more that we can do with this experience to be able to make it a lot more customized and unique. Maybe you have multiple different types of things spawning in different places. Maybe you have different nets. Maybe you have obstacles and slopes. Maybe you have things that, well, if you want to think about custom development, things that appear and disappear or things that change over time, but that's up to you and your coding experience if you want to tackle. Inside of this experience, what do we have in terms of our hierarchy assets on the left of our Unity project? Well, we have our two players, player one and player two, that each have their own components we'll talk about a bit later. We have the sun in the sky, which we can actually rotate and adjust to kind of get some different lighting. If you want to make it a bit of a kind of a different place in the sky type of a scene, we want to make it more of a nighttime scene, you can always adjust that. But it's nice to have kind of similar shadows to make the game feel a little bit more equal and fair in a type of game like this. Then we have our player one and player two goals, and we have our arena. This arena is just the floor. I'm actually gonna just leave this as is right here, the floor of the map, a nice simple thing. Our ball floating in the sky here. Our kickoff spot, which is an invisible point where our ball is going to return to after each goal. It's kind of the teleport point where the ball returns to. This event system, which you can kind of ignore, we don't need to worry about interacting with this much at all. And then the walls, which I packaged up under one file here to keep it more organized. But these are just the four walls of the arena. When you're making your own version of this game, you might want to expand this arena and make it quite a bit larger and add in a lot more types of custom content into it. Because right now, it's a pretty simple thing, and we can definitely add more customization to this. Something else I plan on adding by the time you see this tutorial is the ability for the player to jump as well. So take a look for that in terms of each player to allow them to have a jump mechanic, which I think will add some interesting content to this experience as well. All right, let's head over to our second scene, which is a bit more of a collectible race scene. In here, we have kind of a simple maze. I guess it's kind of a maze. Looks kind of like Pac-Man arena in a way, and where you have to go and race to see who can collect the most coins in this experience. I'm just going to control one player again so you can see kind of what goes on in the user interface, and I can explain it. But here at the bottom, I'm controlling player two, and each time I collect a coin, the score goes up by 1. And the goal of this is to, by the time all the collectibles are collected, to be the one who has the most. And so you'll see here that as I collect these, my score is increasing, and it's kind of cut off on the size of my screen here. Let me make this a bit wider to where you can see it a bit more clearly. And my score is 13, 14, 15, 16 to 0. And once all the collectibles are completed, it tells us who won and with what score. And if you want to restart this, right now we're going to keep it simple and just have you restart the game to kind of play it again with whoever you're versing against. So each scene will just open separately. So I've created a basic experience here. You're going to be able to create maybe different types of collectibles that do different things. Right now, these coins are pretty straightforward. They just kind of float in the air, And I think they spin slowly as a little kind of mini animation, but there's lots of things that we can think about adding to make our collectibles kind of have unique features and unique looks as well. In the hierarchy on the side, we have our light that guides the lighting in the scene, like always. We have the world, which is all of these different cubes that make up the walls and make up these pillars that block everything, that are all tucked away under one empty object to keep it organized. We have our two players. We have our collectibles that are all tucked under one thing, and it's really important that we organize our collectibles under this one system, because once we do so, it allows for the game to keep track of how many are left on its own without us having to do any coding, because I've pre-built that for you. And again, we'll ignore the event system. So we have two different types of competitive games. One where we're actually trying to hit something into a net, and another one where we're trying to collect more things than our opponents before, well, maybe we'll actually be able to add a timer in by the end of this tutorial series. We'll see how much time this all takes. But in the next video, I'm going to focus specifically on this game scene and explain for you how you can actually customize this and make it much more of your own.